You think people fear arrogance, but silent confidence makes them far more uneasy. They sense a mind that does not beg for reassurance or approval. If you truly saw this pattern, you would never shrink your presence again. Confidence is not only a feeling inside you, it is a signal broadcast into every room. Other people read that signal before they even notice your words. Their bodies react faster than their thoughts, and this is where dark psychology begins. Most people live inside an unspoken agreement of shared insecurity. You downplay your strengths, they downplay theirs, everyone stays comfortably small together. When you break this agreement with calm confidence, they feel something like betrayal. Their nervous system whispers that you are no longer safe to manage. Dark psychology starts here, not in manipulation, but in how minds protect their fragile balance. A confident mind becomes an unexpected mirror, showing people what they have avoided for years. Your steady eyes reveal their self-doubt. Your posture reveals their inner collapse. They do not say this with words, they show it with reactions and tiny shifts. They talk faster around you. They explain themselves when no explanation was needed. They laugh after every sentence, checking if you are giving silent approval. They interrupt you or speak over you, trying to prove that you are not above them. On the surface, this looks like random behavior, but it follows an invisible script. Emotional intelligence means you start reading this script line by line. You see that their fear is not about you, it is about hierarchy and control. A calm mind threatens every unhealed wound connected to status and worth. People are afraid you will silently judge them, the way they already judge themselves. An old strategist once observed that power rests inside perception, not only inside force. You see this clearly when your quiet confidence changes the emotional temperature in seconds. The moment you stop apologizing for your presence, people rearrange themselves around you. Some step closer, seeking security, others step back, feeling exposed and evaluated. Their fear grows when they cannot predict you. Most people expect three familiar reactions from others. Either people please, attack, or withdraw. When you remain calm and grounded, you break this simple emotional triangle. Your lack of overreaction confuses their nervous system, and confusion often turns into fear. Notice what happens when someone makes a small testing comment. They expect you to defend yourself with long explanations and nervous smiles. They expect you to shrink your body language to prove you are not a threat. Instead, your calm eyes stay steady, your breathing remains slow and silent. In that moment, their mind starts running calculations. They think this person cannot be pushed easily. This person is not hungry for approval. If you are not desperate for approval, they cannot control you with rejection. If they cannot control you with rejection, their usual weapons become useless. This is the core of why people fear your confidence. Your emotional stability removes their favorite forms of invisible leverage. They cannot hook you through guilt because you do not need their validation. They cannot hook you through flattery because you see the motive behind their praise. Seen through this lens, emotional intelligence becomes a shield rather than a weapon. You read the testing comments without taking them personally. You notice when someone uses silence to pressure you for a reaction. You understand when someone pretends to be confused, only to make you over-explain yourself. When you used to lack inner structure, these tactics worked quickly. A raised eyebrow could make you rewrite your entire personality in seconds. A mild joke at your expense could make you become a softer version of yourself. You thought you were keeping peace, but you were surrendering your own center. Now the structure inside you is different. You hold a clear map of your values and standards. You know what respect feels like in tone, words, and timing. You recognize emotional games as soon as tension enters the air. This shift is deeply unsettling for people who relied on your old patterns. You no longer rush to fill every silence, so they lose emotional control of the moment. You no longer chase after every cold reaction, so they lose control of your mood. You no longer explain every choice, so they lose access to your inner logic. They may say you changed, they may call you distant or cold. What they truly mean is you stopped allowing their insecurity to guide your behavior. Your calm confidence exposes their dependence on your softness and confusion. They used your old self-doubt as a quiet remote for your emotions. Understand this clearly: a confident mind does not attack others, it simply stops bending. When you stop bending, people must face the weight of their own unresolved fears. For some, this becomes an invitation to grow and stabilize themselves. For others, it feels like an unbearable threat that must be neutralized. So they may increase their tests. They talk about you in subtle ways, trying to pull your image down. They make small predictions about your failure, hoping you will collapse under pressure. They try to provoke visible anger, so they can say your calmness was always fake. If you react exactly as they hope, the old order returns. Your confidence becomes a temporary mask, easily removed by their disapproval. Your mind returns to serving their emotional comfort instead of your own clarity. Their fear decreases, not because they feel safe, but because they feel in control again. However, when you stay calm and grounded, something more powerful happens. You do not argue with their view of you, you simply keep living your standard. You let your actions and presence speak in a language different from their gossip. You allow time to expose patterns, both yours and theirs. This is where the deeper layer of dark psychology appears. People begin to realize that their attempts to shake you only reveal their own instability. Observers notice who is reactive and who remains centered under pressure. The hidden hierarchy silently shifts, and many never understand why they feel displaced. You are not dominating them, you are simply refusing to abandon your mental ground. This quiet refusal feels like power because it is rooted in self-trust. A mind that trusts itself does not beg for acceptance from every passing judgment. It filters feedback carefully, searching for truth instead of chasing approval. Emotional intelligence guided by such self-trust becomes almost unsettling to watch. You notice micro changes in tone that reveal hidden hostility. You notice forced compliments that hide resentment under sugar-coated words. You notice when someone brings up your weakness only when others are watching. In earlier years, such details would pass under your radar. You would feel tired around certain people without knowing why. Now you see the strings and the subtle pulls behind each interaction. You realize that your confidence did not create malice, it only illuminated it. This realization can become heavy if you are not prepared. Suddenly, you see that many relationships rested on your willingness to stay small. The moment you step into stable confidence, those relationships begin to shake. Each person must decide whether they grow with you or fight against your new clarity. Inside this storm, you face an important inner choice. You can soften your light again, hide your confidence, and keep old comfort alive. Or you can accept that your calm strength will trigger unhealed minds around you. You can treat their fear not as your fault, but as information about their state. The real mastery is not in controlling them, but in managing your own response. You can move with respect and firmness at the same time. You can refuse disrespect without turning bitter or cruel. You can hold boundaries without feeling guilty for existing at your full height. Yet a final twist waits beneath all of this. Once you truly understand why people fear your confidence, your excuses disappear. You can no longer pretend that shrinking yourself protects anyone. And you silently realize that the next move of this psychological game will never again belong to their fear. You think confidence protects you, but it also reveals who feels threatened. You notice reactions shifting before any words are exchanged. If you truly understood these signals, you would never misread tension again. Silent confidence changes the emotional system of every interaction. The mind across from you begins scanning for weakness with incredible speed. When it does not find weakness, it switches to a defensive mode without announcing it. This switch happens faster than thought. The nervous system detects your calm posture, your steady breathing, your grounded tone. It reads these signals as indicators of inner structure, not aggression. Structure scares fragile minds more than anger ever could. Anger is predictable, structure is not. Many people grew up learning how to handle loud dominance, dismissive comments, and hot tempers. They know how to navigate noise, but they cannot navigate quiet precision. Your stillness feels like a psychological mirror, silently exposing cracks. Dark psychology begins here, in the tension between your clarity and their discomfort. They think your confidence is a challenge, even when you offer no challenge. Their fear is not about your strength, it is about their hidden insecurity. Your calmness becomes evidence that they lack the same internal anchor. You notice subtle behaviors when their fear activates. They act overly helpful, trying to gain your approval without admitting it. They repeat small achievements loudly, hoping you are impressed. They interrupt you with unnecessary advice to prove superiority. Each move is an attempt to reduce the gap they imagine between you and themselves. Emotional intelligence teaches you to decode these moves without judgment. You see that fear behaves like a silent algorithm. This algorithm assigns roles inside every interaction. When someone senses your confidence, they fear being forced into the weaker role. Most people cannot tolerate being in a perceived lower position. Not because the position is harmful, but because their self-worth is unstable. Your calm presence makes that instability louder inside their mind. They respond not to you, but to their own internal noise. Notice the tiny moments when their tone shifts. A calm voice becomes sharper, a neutral question becomes an accusation. A casual remark becomes a subtle test, checking whether you stay composed. In their mind, if they can shake you even slightly, the hierarchy resets. If you react defensively, they regain psychological ground. If you become angry, they feel justified in their insecurity. If you over-explain yourself, they feel superior again. They wait for any crack in your emotional posture. This is why calmness becomes your greatest strategic advantage. Calmness is not weakness, it is emotional discipline. It communicates that you are not driven by insecurity or fear of judgment. People respect this, but they also fear the clarity it brings. You notice that some individuals increase their tests. They speak with subtle sarcasm, pretending it is harmless. They bring up your past mistakes, checking if you still carry shame. They question your decisions in front of others, hoping to regain control of the moment. These are not attacks, they are attempts to balance their own inner discomfort. They fear that your confidence exposes their lack of emotional structure. They fear the possibility that you cannot be controlled through guilt or approval. They fear that your mind belongs to you and not to the collective insecurity. Your job is not to fight them, your job is to remain grounded. You do not need to match their tone, you only need to hold your own. Every moment of composure increases the psychological gap they feel. This gap forces them to confront the truth they avoided. A stable mind is rare, and rarity always triggers reaction. People fear what they cannot influence, and they chase what they can control. When they cannot control your mood, they begin controlling the narrative. They describe you as distant, cold, or difficult, but these are projections. The truth behind their words is far more simple. Your confidence challenges the roles they once assigned to you. Your clarity challenges their comfort. Your self-trust challenges their hidden emotional dependence. As you grow more centered, their reactions grow more transparent. You begin to see which relationships were built on your old weaknesses. You see who includes you only when you feel small. You see who becomes uncomfortable when you speak with certainty. This awareness is not pleasant, but it is powerful. Once you notice these dynamics, you can no longer return to innocence. You cannot unsee the psychological patterns behind fear-based reactions. You cannot pretend that confidence harms people when insecurity is the real spark. The deeper you go, the clearer the pattern becomes. Confidence does not create fear, it exposes the fear already present. Your presence acts like a spotlight on their suppressed wounds. Your calmness forces them to face what they hope to hide. And then a question forms inside you, a quiet but dangerous question. If your confidence reveals so much about others, what happens when you refuse to shrink even once? You think confidence is only a personal strength, but it also becomes a psychological disruptor. Your presence challenges the hidden emotional order people depend on. If you understood this disruption clearly, you would never doubt your quiet power again. Confidence is not loud, it is a stable center inside the mind. When you hold this center, others begin measuring themselves against you. This measurement does not happen consciously, it happens automatically. The human mind is always scanning for hierarchy. Not physical hierarchy, but emotional hierarchy. Who is calm, who is reactive, who is grounded, who is insecure. The one who stays grounded becomes the silent reference point. When you hold this reference point, people become unsettled. They are not afraid of you, they are afraid of what you represent. You represent the version of themselves they could not become. Dark psychology appears not in manipulation, but in perception. Your calmness forces people to confront their lack of emotional training. Your clarity exposes the chaos they hide behind humor or sarcasm. Your stability makes their reactions feel childish even to themselves. They fear this exposure, not because you shame them, but because they feel inferior without knowing why. Their mind begins defending itself with reactive patterns. These patterns are old, automatic, and deeply predictable. Watch the first pattern emerge. They will try to downplay your strengths with small remarks. They will reduce your achievements to luck or timing. They will interrupt your clarity with forced humor. They will pretend your standards are unrealistic. They do this to shrink the psychological gap your confidence creates. The gap threatens their emotional identity. If you stand tall, they must face their own belief that they are small. Notice the second pattern. They will mimic your behavior, but without understanding its source. They adopt your posture, your tone, your calm delivery. But their version lacks the internal foundation that gives yours power. Mimicry without depth creates insecurity instead of confidence. Now observe the third pattern. They become hyper-aware of their own flaws in your presence. They adjust their clothes, their voice, their facial expression. They overthink every sentence they say. They treat your silence like judgment even when it is not. Their nervous system reacts to your internal stillness. Stillness feels like a test they cannot pass. Your emotional discipline forces them to confront their inner noise. This is why many people feel anxious around confident individuals. Your presence acts like a psychological X-ray, revealing their hidden instability. They fear that you can see their insecurity clearly. They fear that you are quietly evaluating them. But here lies a deeper truth. They are not afraid of your evaluation, they are afraid of their own. Your confidence triggers the inner critic they have avoided for years. The voice inside them becomes louder when you are near. This voice asks painful questions. Why can they stay so calm while you feel tense? Why do they speak with clarity while you cannot? Why do they trust themselves while you overthink everything? Instead of facing these questions, people project discomfort outward. They decide you are intimidating. They decide you are arrogant. They decide you think you are better than them. Projection protects the ego from painful truth. It is easier to dislike your confidence than confront their insecurity. It is easier to call you distant than admit they lack inner control. Emotional intelligence lets you understand this without taking it personally. You see that every reaction comes from a psychological need. Some need validation, others need control, others need superiority. Your confidence blocks all three, and this is why fear increases. The more you stay calm, the more reactive they become. The more you speak with clarity, the more they search for flaws. The more grounded you are, the more they feel their foundation shaking. This dynamic reveals something powerful about the mind. People do not fear strength, they fear anything that exposes weakness. Your presence becomes a silent reminder of everything they avoid inside. And avoidance always transforms into tension. You begin to understand why some people suddenly distance themselves. Your confidence makes them feel judged, even when you are neutral. Your calmness makes them feel unstable, even when you offer no threat. Your clarity makes their excuses feel too loud to hide. But there is one more layer hidden beneath all this. A layer that changes the entire way you read human behavior. A layer that explains why people sabotage you even when you mean no harm. The mind that fears your confidence is not reacting to you at all. It is reacting to a deeper truth it can no longer suppress. And this leads to the next reveal that most people never recognize. If confidence exposes their hidden wounds, what happens when you unknowingly expose the wound they protect the most? You think confidence only disturbs insecure minds, but it does something far deeper. It awakens the one wound every person tries to hide from the world. If you understood this wound, you would understand every fear directed toward you. The human mind carries a secret belief formed in early life. A belief that whispers you are not enough, you are not worthy, you might fail. Most people spend their entire adulthood hiding this belief under noise. They keep themselves distracted, so they never meet this wound face to face. Your confidence removes that distraction. Your inner stillness shines a bright light on the wound they buried. Your calm presence says you are allowed to exist without fear, and they are not. This contrast triggers emotional panic even if they keep smiling. They fear not you, but the confrontation you force within themselves. You expose the fact that they never built internal stability. You show them what it looks like to speak without seeking permission. You reveal how much they depend on external approval. Dark psychology becomes clear through this reaction. Your confidence threatens their identity structure, not their ego. Their identity depends on never feeling small again. When your presence activates that feeling, they see it as danger. Watch how the wound expresses itself. They become louder, trying to cover the discomfort rising inside them. They question your choices, hoping to protect their own self-image. They judge your calmness because it highlights their restlessness. They invent stories about your intentions to avoid facing their insecurity. Your confidence is a mirror. They are not afraid of the mirror, they are afraid of the reflection. Some attempt to pull you down to their level. Not out of cruelty, but out of emotional survival. If they can make you doubt yourself, they can escape their own doubt. If they can provoke you, they can avoid looking inward. Others attempt to cling to you, hoping your stability will replace their own. They absorb your words, your habits, your calm tone. But none of it stays, because borrowed confidence collapses under pressure. This is why some admire you at first and resent you later. Your presence reminds them of the version of themselves they abandoned. Admiration becomes envy when they realize you stayed committed, and they did not. You begin to see a pattern in all human reactions to confidence. Fear, admiration, resentment, imitation, distance, attraction. All of it comes from one place, the wound of feeling internally weak. Your strength magnifies whatever insecurity they already carried. This is your awakening. You finally realize that confidence is not just a trait, it is a psychological force. A force that reveals hierarchy, wounds, projections, and hidden fears. A force that defines how people treat you long before you speak. But now comes the final realization, the one most people never reach. You start to understand that the real danger is not their fear of your confidence. The real danger is when their fear begins shaping your behavior. If you shrink to protect their comfort, you abandon your center. If you explain yourself to reduce their insecurity, you weaken your clarity. If you soften your standards to avoid their jealousy, you dim your presence. If you carry their emotional burden, you lose control of your own mind. This is how many confident individuals fall back into insecurity. Not because they lack strength, but because they treat others' feelings as commands. They internalize reactions that never belong to them. Your task is to see through this illusion. Their fear is information, not instruction. Their insecurity is data, not direction. Their discomfort is their responsibility, not your burden. Confidence becomes unshakable only when you stop negotiating with fear that is not yours. Your calmness becomes unbreakable when you stop responding to emotional pressure. Your clarity becomes unstoppable when you stop shrinking for fragile egos. The final truth settles in your mind like quiet lightning. People do not fear your confidence. They fear losing the control they once had over your identity. When your confidence grows, their influence fades. When your influence grows, their insecurity rises. And now the story ends with a twist that reveals everything. The moment you realize you were never the threat. You were only the trigger for what was already inside them. Is the moment you understand the deepest law of psychological power. Your confidence does not create fear. Your confidence exposes truth. And truth always rewrites the silent hierarchy of every mind it touches.